They called him the Diesel.
Crank up that diesel. Let's go.
He leaned across the table and he goes, "You need to get me back there. I'll make you famous."
And to Riggins, good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone.
It's Riggo the Diesel.
There you are. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome to this edition of Riggo the Diesel. I'm John Riggins. This is episode 64. We'll dedicate it to Ron Saul, number 64.
Yes. Salty
Big
dog.
Ronnie. This actually is season 2, episode 24, if you're scoring it that way. This is Super Bowl week, Larry, which
Yes,
I
John.
thought for the longest time when I played about 35 years ago that I would never know what this was about. And what I recall when I first got into the NFL, I didn't really have a whole lot of, I didn't have any, what do you call them, I didn't have a sense of entitlement, even though I was a 6th overall pick. But I had what I thought was a pretty modest goal, and that was to play in a Super Bowl. I don't know why I thought that way, but it was just something that was like something I wanted to do. You go through I think I went through 10, 11 seasons, and, after a while you you get into that mindset. It's hard not to, where you just realize that, like a lot of times in Hollywood, you have people that are very good actors, so to speak. They never get their shot they never get that one performance that puts them over the top. And you see people that have been acting for years that finally do get it. It comes late in life. And but I got that mindset that I was always going to be on the B team, so to speak, one of the cast of thousands. But when we...
Why? Why'd you think that?
Well, I think probably because my first 5 years was with the Jets.
That might be it.
Think about it. That had a lot to do with it. And then when I came down here, they had transition, and the team. We were close a couple of years, but that was also a heartbreaker down in Dallas in 1979.
That's right.
You get so close, and had you won that game, you'd had home field advantage and really would have had a shot because that team was playing so well at the end of the season. So you just kind of get into that. Well, that so much so that I took the next season off and didn't know if I was going to come back and play because I kind of felt like that goal that I don't think it's going to happen. Now I got as close as I was ever going to get. I'm healthy. Why not? Why shouldn't I just go on and get on with my life?
Well, you were bored, broken back, is what you were.
Yes, I ended up that way. Yeah, but what I wanted to say was ultimately I did come back, and lo and behold, it happened. And I have to say, really, I mean, just by the very nature of the fact of what that game means to millions of people, that it clearly changed my life. I'd be back in Kansas now, probably on, still going up to Centralia to feed cattle, living in Lawrence, Kansas, where I went to school. And that's not a pleasant thought, let me tell you that right now. Nothing against Lawrence, Kansas, but I'm thinking of who I might have been living with while I was back in Kansas. I don't want to mention names, but you get the picture.
It established your legacy.
What's that?
It established your legacy.
Yeah, exactly.
That ball game, that run, that Super Bowl run, and everything that led up to it. Everything that led up to it. It culminated in that one play. And, of course, you had a few nice runs prior to that. The game against Detroit was a very memorable game, right? And there were so many memorable plays and games that year. But you were a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
And you will always be. And I think that ensured your spot in Canton. Maybe you were already headed to Canton because of your stats and what you'd accomplished up to that. But that certainly was the capper for your career, and I'll never forget it. We still play those highlights, John.
Yeah.
You see NFL film still running the highlights so many years later. It's an honor to do the show with you. It's an honor to know you. After all that you accomplished, I know that things changed in life. Hey, if you had won that game in Dallas, your life would have changed. If Joe Gibbs hadn't been hired, if you hadn't had Joe Gibbs come out that day with the 2 beers in your hands, your life might have changed. There's so many paths that you take in your life that change your ultimate destination.
Let me say this about that, though. When it's all said and done, though, I have to tell you that was a great moment out in California. But like I said, that was actually, at that point in time, by then, I was playing with the house's money. I couldn't lose. I'd gotten to the Super Bowl. Basically, I'd accomplished my goal.
Right.
Because when we left RFK Stadium the week before that, because back then there was only, because it was a tournament special situation, when we left RFK, we were the NFC champions. We had just beat Dallas at RFK in front of the home fans to get to go to pass. And to me, that was about as much joy I think I've ever felt about a victory in football. I guess you'd say that the Super Bowl was just, icing. I don't know exactly how to say it. It was great, but when I think of the moments in that moment, what you felt about beating Dallas, the people that you wanted to beat, the team by which you measured, a lot of teams, at least I felt like you could measure yourself against the Dallas Cowboys. If you could play well against the Cowboys, you could play well against anybody. And to beat them at home in front of the fans and how the town felt about Dallas back then, that was where the action was.
It was euphoric.
Yeah, it was. It was unbelievable.
Now, you famously did not come home with the team from the Super Bowl because I think you were doing the Tonight Show or something.
No, actually, I ended up
Pro Bowl. Or
I had to stay over because I was the MVP, and they had a lunch.
Yeah.
They had a luncheon the next day for the MVP.
Right, but I want to know what you did the night that the Redskins beat the Cowboys in that NFC Championship game, because here you are, you're in your home, and the town was yours. Can you recall where you went that night after you guys won that NFC Championship, or is it just part of the book that you're going to write one day? And
it might be part of a book, but in all honesty, Larry, I'm going to guess because the short answer is no, I don't remember where we went. But I could say by the time I got to the parking lot, I was on my hands and knees. That was because I was worn out from carrying the ball 36 times against the Cowboys. No, it was probably from something else. No, I don't recall, but it was a very joyous moment. Let me say that.
It was joyous. Do you recall?
Yeah. I do remember, though, the night after we went up to Ron Saul's room at the hotel there, the West Coast, South Coast Plaza was the hotel we stayed in, which is right there in that little town where John Wayne Airport is now,
right.
And I forget the name of the town, and it's really a quaint little town. I think that's basically it's right beside Newport Beach.
Yes,
and there's a marina there where John Wayne used to keep his boat and a bunch of other Hollywood people. We didn't know it at the time because we just go to the hotel and back. But yeah, that whole week out there that week, that was something, and it was just the opposite of going to Tampa. It's so strange, Larry, how 1 year to the next. Here I'd played all these years, didn't know for sure, if I was ever going to play in a Super Bowl, become King Ring-a-Ding in my mind, and then the next year you go back to the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden, these entitlements I told you I didn't have, all of a sudden I think I did feel I had a sense of entitlement, and I don't know, and I think, we went 14-2 that year, and maybe I was a little bit full of myself. I was full of myself. But there was so many distractions down in Tampa. Tampa was a town who had never had a Super Bowl. And now this is interesting because my wife went to Fordham Law School, and they had a professor from the NFL come in there. I'm not a professor, but they had another lawyer to come in and speak to the group. Well, he was from the NFL, and he got to talking and didn't know anything who he was talking to necessarily about how the NFL during that particular Super Bowl, that Jack Kent Cooke had gotten on the wrong side, not like Al Davis had used to do, on the wrong side of the NFL.
Right.
And so they decided they would, basically even the score with Mr. Cooke by putting the team in the Holiday Inn. Now, I got nothing. I'm listening to not a rap on Holiday Inns. They're fine. But this particular Holiday Inn, which was very short distance to the airport if you went to the game, was so overrun by people. I mean, I think it was like a motel, basically. There were 2 stories.
Packed.
Larry, if you were there, you could not get into the lobby to try to get into the lobby. It was just wall-to-wall people.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like some kind of a political convention or whatever. I remember coming home from practice. And, you get home around 3:30. I'd call the front desk, see if there's any messages, my brothers, my family, whatever. And the line would be busy. I'd wait 10 minutes, call back. Okay, line was busy. I'd wait 30 minutes, go back. Line was busy. It stayed busy till about 7 o'clock at night. You could not get through to the front desk. Don't even think about going down in person to get your messages.
Just because of the number of people and the volume of work going on there.
And this tiny little hotel that the NFL had put us in. And I think that I always look back on that, and I'm always so disappointed that I didn't have the wherewithal to overcome that. When I say overcome that I allowed that to distract me, because it got to the point by the end of the week that it felt like that, you just wanted to play the game and get the hell out of Tampa. It's completely different aura that was out than that was out in Los Angeles at that particular time. Now, I'm sure things are different now in Tampa, but you got to remember that was 1984. Tampa had never had a Super Bowl, and we kind of got thrust. And at the same time, we were the team of the East Coast.
Right.
So all those fans came down there to see us. They didn't come to see the Los Angeles Raiders. The Raiders were left in anonymity in whatever hotel, some high-rise hotel that they were in. So, yeah, we got kind of screwed around in that deal.
Must have driven Coach Gibbs crazy. to have that kind of distraction before the big game like that. And you mentioned
he never mentioned it, but I'm sure that if you ask him about it today, he'd say, "Yeah, there was a big difference between the two Super Bowls for the Washington Redskins."
We got to take care of a little business here.
Go right ahead.
Okay, but before we do, you mentioned John Wayne Airport.
Yes, I did.
And that is the airport that Kobe's helicopter was flying out of yesterday.
That's where it left from.
That's where it left from. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Did you know the Redskins are sponsored by Koch Industries? That's K-O-C-H, Koch. Their 67,000 U.S. employees make a lot of things that make game day better. Greener turf, they make that. Stronger paper products for tailgating, they make that as well. And electronic components and TV and smart devices so you can watch a Redskins victory anywhere. Yeah, Koch makes that too. See all they make for on and off the field at kochmakesthat.com.
We've had a little bit of break in the action here as far as the weather goes, but that's not going to hold out. So, you got some cold weather coming at some point in time, and I'm just telling you ahead of time, you might want to think about having your plumbing inspected to make sure you don't end up with a broken pipe, because I can speak from experience. Bringing in the crew the day after when you've had water damage is no fun, and that's a gift that keeps on giving, probably lasts for a couple, 3-4 weeks if you're lucky. So why don't you do yourself a favor? And you heard me say it all the time. Call O'Connor Plumbing, 1-833-RIGGLE-44. You can't go wrong. They'll come in and give it a once-over, and if you need some work done, they'll give it to you at a reasonable price. And they have extended hours and no overtime charges through the weekdays and also on Saturdays. 1-833-RIGGLE-44, O'Connor Plumbing.
Thank you, sir. Whether on the field or in the classroom, the Redskins believe learning should be fun. That's why we've partnered with youth entrepreneurs to bring their engaging, hands-on style of learning to classrooms in the D.C. metro area. Youth Entrepreneurs curriculum was created by educators for educators. That means it's flexible, fun, and absolutely free. To learn more about Youth Entrepreneurs and how to experience it for yourself, visit getye.org. And Riggo, we're going to start this segment off on Kobe. I guess, with all that happened yesterday, I was watching TV with my son, and all of a sudden the news popped on there. And we really couldn't believe it.
What time did you?
I want to say around 3:45. It came on Fox News, and then they got Jim Gray to come on at about 3:50, and then I flipped to all the other channels. None of the other channels had the story for 15 minutes until the beginning of the Pro Bowl, and then they did an announcement, but they didn't mention that Kobe had passed. So I guess Fox was going off the news that was put out.
Yeah, that's
first
when
by
I turned
TMZ,
it on. That's what I saw.
And then it got worse and worse and worse. And now, we're hearing about the helicopter and how it maybe shouldn't have been flying in the fog. And there's a flight path that it looks a little, makes you think about what was going on, and the elevation that helicopter needed to clear those mountains, and the speed at which they were going at 161 knots was about 189 miles an hour. So So what did happen? Tell me, because I don't know. I really don't know. They've got the FAA.
FAA's involved.
Todd knows a lot about the FAA.
The police helicopter squad were grounded.
Right.
They were not flying.
But yet you saw helicopters hovering above the wreckage.
Well,
Of course.
After the fact, because fogs and a lot of the conditions had changed.
Oh.
And they were having difficulty actually getting rescue workers to the site.
Yeah.
Actually,
There was no roads up there too.
Yeah, that was
But it's really close to houses there too. It wasn't that far away. It could have really been
right. I got a cousin that lives up in West Village or Westlake Village.
Walking trail through there too that you could see that
Yeah, I saw that in the aerial.
Went right by it. But John, you've taken some pilot lessons.
Yeah, and what I was going to.
VRF.
No, IFR is what they would have been flying. Instrument flight rules. So they would have had to been on instruments in that, which, that's what all the big pilots fly. I mean, once you get up, you can't see anything. I've flown.
Well, they gave them special permission. They gave this pilot special permission in this particular situation. So we're going to learn a lot more, obviously.
I saw a quote from one of his pilots who said that type of twin engine, there's two engines on that helicopter. That was like a $13 million helicopter.
That's probably what
top of the line. And he says very almost impossible for both engines to go out in that helicopter. So he was speculating the conditions
is what
were
caused the crash.
Contributing factor. And but it's obviously 9 people lost their lives, including Kobe Bryant and his daughter.
Yeah,
and I can tell you that Kobe came to a soccer game at FedEx Field a couple of years ago, and I got a picture with him. I had a chance to meet him. He was in one of the suites. He had autographed basketball that I ended up giving my son, who's now 24 years old. But back then, he was really thrilled because Kobe was his favorite basketball player. Super nice guy, was an Eagle fan. I was in Philadelphia, and we joked about it a little bit. Big soccer fan, and just I can't recall any such tragedy happening ever to this degree with someone this big. People talked about Roberto Clemente's plane going down back in the day, but I think Kobe Bryant probably a bigger sports icon than Roberto Clemente, even though Clemente was a real big star.
Well,
Internationally.
but keep in mind, too, the different generations. You're talking about a completely different thing with the communications nowadays.
Yes, become a bigger star that way.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a sign of the times where everybody feels like they even know somebody better than they would have back in those days, because basically whatever you'd see a little bit, Roberto Clemente, who really knew anything about him, other than the fact because he was, Puerto Rico, I think is where.
Yeah, great baseball player, Pittsburgh Steelers, for those who might not know. And then other people were talking on the news about, similar Pittsburgh Pirates, similar situations with stars that pass too young, but this is such an accident.
Yeah,
it's not a self-inflicted type of thing, and I don't know. It's very, very sad. I think it's kind of gripped everybody in the sports world, and it's going to take a while to celebrate his life, obviously. But when 41 years old and his daughter as well, I mean, he had a lot of living still to go. I mean, he had a lot of life left.
I hear what you're saying, but you know what? For my take on it is that he had lived a life. In 41 years, he'd lived a great life. He'd accomplished the things he wanted to accomplish. And I don't want to take anything, but I feel so bad. The empathy I have, of course, I have two daughters, but for the 13-year-old daughter, I'm going, gosh, to me, I can't. And then you got to feel, because he's sucking up all the oxygen over the death, but you have to feel for the other it would have been the other seven passengers that were on that plane. I mean, that's a
couple kids who played basketball with
they were
his
going
daughter.
to what? They were going to a game or a practice
tournament
or something?
at the complex that had his name on it. He had done so much for so many people. He was just a super guy.
Yeah,
just super guy, and everybody loved him. Nobody has yet to say anything negative about the guy, and they won't, because not a whole lot to say. But
he'll go out a hero always.
Yeah, and again, having a chance to meet him, can't close to say that I knew him, but just the moment, the 2 minutes that I met the guy, you could tell he was a genuine person, good guy, real good guy. So just a tragedy, and that's kind of going to be what everybody remembers from this past weekend. I guess people are going to say, "Where were you?" And you have a few of those memories, don't you? Where were you when?
Absolutely.
I've already forgot.
Yeah.
And you and I were working together at the time when Magic Johnson announced that he had HIV, which at that particular time was a
shocker. And we were working together when Len Bias passed away too. That was another one. Just a shocker that,
I think I remember that, weirdly enough. I was at some restaurant.
Yeah, but again, that's an OD, and this is a different story with his daughter. And
so I'll be curious to know exactly what the group that goes out and does the
NTSB.
Find out exactly what happened.
They're having a hard time.
If it was pilot error or if it was mechanical or what the problem was.
It's hard to reach the crash site. I was reading that today. It's really hard to reach the crash site with all that they need to take up there to retrieve the remains, as well as
so
the
they
wreckage.
Need helicopters basically to go in there.
I don't know how they get up there. I don't know. Probably some kind of four-wheelers on those trails, I guess. I don't know, but it was just unforgettable. It was surreal. Almost couldn't believe it. And then obviously, just the night before, that morning, it was LeBron's quotes from the night before. He had passed Kobe.
Right.
What was it? Third all time on the list.
That's what.
Time score in NBA history, and
real sad.
And the viral video with him and his daughter, just a couple of weeks prior to.
No, it was that Saturday. He was there last Saturday at that same place.
And probably did the same thing. Took the same helicopter.
I'm thinking the day before they had pictures of him. They says the last pictures of him and his daughter at the tournament, at that same tournament on Saturday. So it must have been, and again, he used that helicopter. I listened to Jim on the show. They had Jim Gray on there for 25 minutes straight, and then the lady asked him, after having him on the air for 25 minutes, they asked Jim Gray the following: "Have you spoken to his wife or any members of his immediate family?" And he goes, "How could I? I've been on the air with you guys the whole time." It was just people sometimes ask questions without thinking when the stress is so high.
Well, unfortunately, once again, and tragic news situation as such, and a lot of news outlets embarrass themselves with pushing out wrong information,
right?
And everybody's rush to be first in this environment, and it's just awful to think that his family had not been notified, and TMZ and others reported.
That's what the sheriff out there said on that press conference. So they were mad that was released without notification of next of kin, which is
that's insane.
Just really out of bounds, right?
That's just unacceptable.
And they only said it was 4 people, but how about these other poor people that maybe their families knew that they were on that same helicopter going to the same tournament?
Misidentifying, saying Rick Fox, a former teammate. was
Yes,
also
I heard about that too.
and
Yep.
with his family and what's going in their minds. So again, it's
Sloppy
Yeah.
at best.
It is
Unacceptable.
It is unacceptable.
Non-professional.
We're gonna shift gears. Okay?
Please.
We're gonna shift gears. We're gonna give you a couple reads, then we're gonna come back and talk about the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You've got stats over there for the Super Bowl.
I've got more useless stats than you can.
I have.
They're all pretty useful.
I have useful stats.
Except for most carries.
That's exactly right. What's the most, you ever carry the ball?
That
over
I had
40
nothing to
times?
do with.
40 times the most you ever carried the ball?
No, 38.
38.
Yeah, that was it.
That's a heavy load right there, as they call
Get
it.
these reads. We'll talk about that more.
Looking for another chance to win? A $100,000 scratch or replay from the Virginia Lottery is exactly that. Now through March 31st, any non-winning Virginia Lottery scratcher offers a shot at winning $500 in a daily drawing or even $10,000. Now here's a lowdown. Any non-winning Virginia Lottery scratcher can be entered into a daily drawing. In each daily drawing, 2 players will win $500 each. Every entry into the daily drawing is automatically entered into the grand prize drawing, which is set for April the 7th. You follow me there, Todd?
Yes.
On April 7th, one lucky player will win the $10,000 grand prize. All entries must be entered through the virginialottery.com/replay site or the Virginia Lottery app. Now, the fun doesn't stop. If you don't win on your scratcher, just replay it with $100,000 scratcher replay. Visit virginialottery.com/replay for more information. The odds of winning a prize in this scratcher replay promotion depend on the number of entries received. Bring your team to cheer on the team. That's the Redskins. The 2020 Redskins Group Tippett deposit window is now open. Your deposit will give you priority access to the best seats available when the 2020 schedule is released. Visit redskins.com/group tickets or call or text 301-276-6033 for more information on group tickets.
Hey, I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
Who's bored? Who's broke? And who's back?
I wanted to always see the redwoods. I wanted to see the Rocky Mountains. I wanted to see the Painted Desert, the Petrified Forest, the Grand Canyon. That was like the land that I always wanted to go to.
John Riggins.
All right, we're back, and we're going to get into the Super Bowl. I guess a little bit of minutia or what do they call that stuff?
Trivia.
I want to know, before we do the trivia, and I want to just zero in on John Riggins right now.
Okay.
Who's going to win this game?
Ooh.
Give us your concise breakdown. You've got one team, Kansas City's got a real strong quarterback, decent, pretty good defense. San Francisco looks to be the more talented team, except at the most important position. So, Riggo, you're teed up.
Okay, here we go. I hadn't thought about it, so you're catching me a little bit off guard here, but at the same time, it's kind of like you go with some things that you know to be tried and true, and that's defense is what usually brings it home. And from that standpoint, I'm so impressed with San Francisco's defense that even though Kansas City's got this offense that nobody's been able to chokehold since the playoffs started, they may be up against something they haven't seen the likes of. And I'm going to go, but I want to know before I'm going to tell you, I'm going to take San Francisco, but a little bit is on, what are the odds makers saying, Todd? Is it still 1.5 at Kansas City?
Yeah.
Kansas City's given 1.5?
1.5.
That hasn't changed since the first day.
No.
No,
Yeah.
that's why I asked what it was. But I think that San Francisco is going to end up winning this game. They're not going to run the ball. Well, who knows if they will or won't? I have no idea. But the one thing we can pretty much count on is that I don't think that anybody's going to be out of this game. I think this is a game that's going to go right down to the wire because with the two teams and their ability to score, particularly Kansas City's, even if they're down and they're down by 10, 14 points with 5 minutes to play, you got to figure they could still be in this ball game.
Man,
So I'm taking San Francisco.
You're taking San Francisco. And high
Which
score,
originally
high
was going to go with
scoring?
Kansas City.
31-28?
That sounds about right. I think it'll be.
High score,
I think they'll
pretty
trade
high-scoring
punches. I think they'll trade punches back and forth. Although Kansas City's defense has improved, if Kansas City's defense ends up throttling, and that's where it gets goofy, is that in a way it was very impressive the way San Francisco won their championship game. They only had to throw the ball, 8 times?
8 passes.
But is that realistic to go to the Super Bowl?
No, I don't think so.
So you're kind of untested going into this game. Kansas City, I mean, they may be just peaking offensively speaking, and if that's the case, then I'm going to have a little egg on my face next week.
Well, you got that running back there,
I think that he's like Timmy Smith. I think that's a one-hit wonder.
Well, maybe was the one hit already played?
I think so. I think last week was his 15 minutes of fame, basically. Could be wrong. But they got 2 other running backs beside him. It just happened to be his number. He was hot, and he took advantage of it.
Both these tight ends could figure into this game.
What's that?
Tight ends on both sides.
Yeah, and once again, that's where you got to go with San Francisco on. I mean, they say that the kid, what's his name? I can't think of it.
Kittle.
Yeah, Kittle.
George Kittle.
And you know what? This is talking about him. This kind of shocked me. He has already come out and said that he's really looking forward to playing somebody on, was it Kansas City? Because somebody that plays for Kansas City in their defensive line or somebody or linebacker used to bully him at Ohio State.
I saw that story.
Right?
I saw
and he's really. I'm thinking to myself.
Yeah.
Let's assume the big guy was. The big guy would never say something like that, but like, hey, I want a piece of that guy. He used to bully me when I was. I'm going, if he bullied me then, won't he bully me now? What's going to change?
Well, he's probably about 5 inches taller and about 50 pounds heavier.
Well, now you bring
a different.
I still think of Alvin Milner, a guy that rubbed my face in the snow back in Centralia years ago. And Alvin right now would probably be about 5'6", but back then I was like 4'10". He was a hulking. But if I ever see Alvin and there's snow on the ground, I'm going to have to do what I got to do.
Alvin Milner, if you're listening to the podcast, please contact John. He's got something to tell you.
Milner actually is the last name. Not
Milner.
Milner. Yeah. Okay.
All right, so you got something over there. You just dying to. I got something I'm
He put in a lot of homework. We got to let him go.
I'm so confused by all the paper that I've got out here now.
Look at you, got 20 pieces of paper.
At least.
But I took, Riggo and I were talking yesterday, and I took it. We were just quizzing each other about some of the broadcasting aspects.
Yes.
Which was fascinating. And always the entertainment,
halftime and the commercials and all. Yeah.
And it was so amazingly different in the first Super Bowl,
that I played in. Yeah.
Who sang the anthem during your game?
I got no clue. I won't think
Todd, is that on one of those sheets of paper?
It is.
Oh, here we go.
It is.
He's got it somewhere.
All I got to do is find it, and let's see here.
Is this we're looking for the singer of our single? I know Frank Sinatra gave a concert down in Tampa. That part I remember.
Really?
I don't have. Yeah, he gave a Frank Sinatra gave a.
Actress Leslie Easterbrook performed the national anthem.
At which Super Bowl?
Yours.
Which one?
Leslie Easterbrook.
17.
Los Angeles Unified School District All-City Band and Leslie Easterbrook. Never.
Good old Leslie.
Not exactly a lot of pizzazz there.
No. How about halftime show?
This is even. This is true.
It's some choir, I bet.
The halftime show was the Kaleidoscope. This was a production in which the
light show.
Oh gosh, where did it go?
Was there a band?
It was. It was a band.
You got too much paperwork on it.
Too much paper over here. Can't find the halftime.
Yeah.
Can't find it.
No, that's all right. We'll get to it later.
One here. I'll give you one that you're never going to be able to guess because I did a little research. How many chicken wings will be eaten Super Bowl week?
By the ton, or
by the
piece?
by the piece?
By the piece.
1.4 billion.
I was getting ready to say something in the billions. Wow.
So that means that means
it'll be about 800,000 or 900,000 or
700
million
chickens
got to bite to death.
I knew he was going to do that division.
Mm-hmm.
How about this? How many pounds of ribs? 10 million pounds of ribs. The ribs aren't that popular for the Super Bowl. Number one food.
Avocado.
It's not in the top 5. Not top.
Avocado's not?
Number 1 is wings. Number 2, this is what you have at home.
Pizza.
Pizza's number 2. Number 3.
Hot dogs.
Nachos. Ooh. And the rest, 4, 5, and 6 do not include hot dogs. 4th, and this is really big. Pizza's like 29%. Nachos, wings 29%. pizza 25%, nachos 15%. Then you get into the single digits. You got dip at 7%. You got chili at 6%,
So
and
that's where the
barbecue
avocados come in.
at 6%.
The avocados.
How much did you make for that Super Bowl win? What's that famous quote from Joe Theismann? He says the winner gets 40, 70?
He said something in the. Didn't he say something in one of those?
Yeah.
In one of right before before you'd go out and warm up, and then the team would all get together.
Yeah, so
and then Joe would give us some really inspirational words, something about the money.
The winner makes $70,000. I thought he says, but that was back then. This year's winner gets $118,000.
Not a really big jump there when you think about it. Not at all.
It's inflation.
Here's something that I had this put in my contract, the very last contract I did, but I never got any value out of it because the team didn't. This is 1985, but it dawned on me by the time that the salaries had started to escalate a little bit, at least nothing like they are now. So, based on what you're telling me, if you're Tom. Well, it wouldn't make a difference. Let's say you're Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins is playing in the Super Bowl, and he wins the game. Well, Kirk Cousins actually should be paid $2 million if it was a regular season game. Here, can you imagine a haircut he's taken to play in a Super Bowl, the biggest game of your life? To me, I brought that up with Mr. Cook in my life, and he goes, and he kind of groused around, and then he went, okay, I'll give you a game check. But it didn't materialize because we didn't make the playoffs. That was my last year. I missed it by that much. I never thought of it the 2 years before that, but all of a sudden it dawned on me. But that is.
Would you, as a player back then, did you remember anything stand out pregame, halftime, postgame, stick out in your mind?
In Tampa, not so much for some reason, but I think that the game in Pasadena, there's a lot there. First of all, it's such an old, venerable stadium, been around forever, and it's the Rose Bowl, something I grew up as a kid, and that was the granddaddy of all bowls, I think, was the Rose Bowl. So even though I went to Kansas, you're never going to play in it because that was Pac-10, Big Ten back in those days. That was who played in that particular game. But I remember the day was just beautiful. I mean, it couldn't have been a nicer day. I don't recall, what was the kickoff, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to guess?
Pacific.
Was it
3 o'clock Pacific, I would think.
That's what I'm thinking, but I don't know 100% because it was such a beautiful sunny day.
You need to condense your stuff over there, man. Yeah. You came so
and I remember
prepared.
the locker room was like this old, dingy kind of almost locker room type thing.
Old.
I remember going in and doing the press conference, as the MVP, and then you had by your locker. And I do remember, the last thing that the equipment manager came up to me because I was notoriously the last guy out of the locker room. I was a very slow dresser after the game was over with. It took me quite a while to cool off. And he goes, "Come on, Riggins, let's go. The night is young." And so I finally got dressed. And everybody was gone. There was nobody in there but me and him. He was waiting on me. So I hurried up and got out of there. And I walked out of there, and I walked out onto that stadium, or walked out onto the grass there. And I looked up, and now the sun had sank down into the Pacific. So, all of a sudden now the night was coming up, and the lights were on. And there were people up there, the cleanup crew was up with the cups and everything, cleaning up the stadium. And so I'm walking across there. And I look up at the scoreboard, and it was still fully illuminated. And I remember seeing where it said Washington 27, Miami 17. And Larry, it still gives me chills. That's when I realized that we were world champions. Even though I knew we'd won the game, that was almost like reading it in the newspaper. Then it became real. It's almost like the World Trade Center. I was only about 2 miles from when it went down, and yet I couldn't see it. 2 days later on a Thursday, that was a Tuesday, on a Thursday, I drive out of the Lincoln Tunnel. I look back down to Lower Manhattan, and it ain't there. And it's the same kind of thing when you realize it really has happened. That when I saw that scoreboard, I realized we really have won this Super Bowl, and we are world champions. Pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Maybe we ought to leave it right there.
I think that's got to end today. Was it episode 24, season 2 or something like that?
Episode 64.
Okay.
Larry, I'll see you next week.
You got a deal, brother.
When you scratch and you don't win,
100K Scratcher Replay.
Say what?
It's the Virginia Lottery 100K Scratcher Replay.
If I scratch and I don't win, I could still win?
That's right. Now through March 31st, enter any non-winning Virginia Lottery Scratcher for a chance to win one of 2 daily $500 prizes or the $10,000 grand prize. Visit VALottery.com/replay for details.
100K Scratcher Replay.
Odds of winning a prize depend on the number of entries received.
Winter is the season for adventure. And if you want a car as exciting as your lifestyle, then it has to be an all-wheel drive Honda SUV. With more features, the CR-V has standard Honda sensing, more room for friends. The Pilot has seating for 8, more comfort. The HR-V has available heated seats, and more rugged. The Passport is built for adventure with ample cargo space and hidden storage compartments. Winter adventure is calling, and Honda is ready to answer. See your local Honda dealer today.
Dear customer service, I can always count on Novak. My power is always on, my payments always go through, and Novak actually cares about the community they serve.
Dear Novak, your electric costs are reasonable. Some electricity is from alternative sources, and cost reductions are passed along during the year. Thanks.
Novak, power you can count on.
Redskins fans, this is Darryl Green. After 20 years of being privileged to don the burgundy and gold on the football field, I've added another team's colors to my collection. For the past 16 years, I've proudly adopted the green and blue of Main Street Bank. Whether I'm using their simple-to-use mobile banking or dealing with their incredibly helpful staff, Main Street Bank always makes things easy for me and all of their customers. To find out all the ways they can help you, visit us at mstreetbank.com, member FDIC.